She's going to try to explain why so many people flee socialist countries and come to capitalist countries, but I have some problems with her explanation.
If socialist countries are so great and capitalist countries are so bad, then why do citizens from socialist countries constantly flee said countries to move to a capitalist country like the United States?
Here I've made a flowchart of her argument. Basically, she says the US destabilizes socialist countries so we can steal their resources and prevent socialists from achieving equality. As evidence of stealing resources, she cites trade deficits.
For America to have and hoard so many resources, they would have to be trading, the other countries would have to be consistently trading at a deficit, meaning that they are giving America more than they are receiving.
No, a trade deficit is when one country buys more goods and services from another country than it sells to that country. So if I go to the store and buy a Coca-Cola for $1, then I have a $1 trade deficit with the store. I've bought $1 more of goods and services than I sold to the store. On the other hand, if I work at that store and they pay me $100, then the store now has a $99 trade deficit with me. I bought $1 worth of goods from the store and I sold $100 worth of services to the store. But in neither case is any exploitation happening. In neither case is anyone giving more than they get. The store chooses to sell me a Coke for $1. I choose to buy it. The store chooses to employ me. I choose to work there. It's a voluntary arrangement, even if the store winds up giving me more money or I give the store more money. But she thinks the trade deficits are evidence of exploitation or of the US stealing other countries' resources. She thinks we accomplish this theft through threat from our military bases.
Meaning that they are giving America more than they are receiving. And why would they do that? Why would they constantly be giving more than they receive? Well, the short answer is that it's not entirely voluntary, and America has their ways to enact and force their will upon other countries. The first way is through military presence and force, right? America has the #1 amount of overseas military bases around the world, at over 750 military bases placed in 80 plus countries around the world. It is for imperialism, and it is to, again, force America's agenda and will on these countries so that they can extract and harvest that country's resources for cheap.
Our largest trade deficit by far is with China. It's about $367 billion. We buy $367 billion more in goods and services from China than we sell to them. And yet, we don't have any military bases, to my knowledge, in China. So why is this? Is China choosing to give us billions of dollars worth of goods and services every year out of fear? Are they afraid we might put military bases in their country? Of course not. China chooses to sell us products. They produce more stuff than their country consumes, and so they sell it to us in exchange for dollars. Another way to see that trade deficits aren't evidence of exploitation or military threat is to look at Guatemala. We have a $6 billion trade surplus with Guatemala. That is, Guatemala buys $6 billion more of goods and services from us than we buy from them. From Guatemala's perspective, Guatemala has a trade deficit with the United States. Is that because Guatemala has military bases all over the United States? Is Guatemala exploiting us? Are they stealing our stuff? Are we choosing to give them more than we get? No, of course not. That's just how the business relationships between the companies in our two countries net out. Another thing to keep in mind with the 750 military bases is that those bases are there with the permission of the host country. And if they asked us to leave, we would. For example, in 2008, the president of Ecuador, citing national sovereignty concerns, decided not to renew the US lease on the Manta military base. So of course we destroyed Ecuador. How dare they? Those are our resources. No, of course not. We said, okay, we'll leave. And we did. The president of Ecuador said, quote, "It is important to recognize that the transition process has been completely correct, peaceful, and positive." She says that America destabilizes the socialist countries not just to steal their resources, but also because the evil American capitalists really don't want countries to have equality.
America doesn't solely sabotage these countries just to harvest their resources for cheap, even though that is one of the benefits of them doing it. They ultimately also do this to make sure that socialism fails, right? They have a vested interest in making sure socialism fails, because if socialism succeeds, capitalism becomes totally obsolete. And the capitalists, the capital owning class who currently lives like gods on the planet, will cease to exist, right? Their class will no longer exist, and it will be just the working class being able to share the resources collectively. And you will no longer be able to have this class of people who can essentially rule the world and act like a god on the planet.
Think about countries that have attempted socialism. Stalin in the USSR, Mao in China, the Kim family in North Korea, or Fidel Castro in Cuba. Clearly, socialism is completely compatible with powerful, unequal elites. The difference is that in capitalist countries, you can get money and power by providing goods and services that people voluntarily choose to buy. But in socialist countries, you get power and money by being in the government, by being a leader in the government and taking it from the public by force. It is absolutely true that the US interfered in socialist countries when those countries aligned with the Soviet Union against us during the Cold War. But the US interference did not cause the Holodomor, where millions of people starved to death in the Soviet Union. US interference didn't cause the Great Purges, where the socialist Soviet Union murdered millions of its own citizens. US interference didn't cause the Great Leap Forward famine in China, where tens of millions of people starved to death. US interference didn't cause the Cultural Revolution, where millions of people were murdered by people acting on behalf of the Chinese government. US interference didn't cause the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia to kill a quarter of their own population. There was never any reason to suspect that socialism might work. It was never based on anything but the musings of Karl Marx and similar philosophers. And countries that have tried socialism have experienced disastrous, horrific failures, with millions of people starving to death or murdered by the government. The one thing socialism hasn't done is succeed. We don't have any examples of socialist success stories. And that's not because the evil, greedy capitalists at the CIA want to stop equality in foreign countries. It's because socialism is a bad system. It's not efficient. It's not productive. The socialists can't produce and distribute enough food to feed their people. And the people living in these socialist countries hate having their property taken from them. They hate being poor and oppressed by one-party totalitarian states. And when people don't like the conditions and resist them, then their socialist government has no choice but to murder them. Ultimately, it's just not a good system. And that's why we don't see any socialist success stories. That's why their countries are poor. And that's why people flee from those countries and go to rich capitalist countries like the United States. Thanks for your time.